So today's guest is a comedian, one of the podcast hosts of the Fourth and 10 podcast, David Perdue. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just like I said, running on fumes. I had a long day yesterday, doing comedy, and then car broke down, and I was stranded. But I'm good now. Could have
I
been
love it.
worse. Yeah, could have been worse.
Well, hey, man, we appreciate you being here, especially with all the stuff that you have going on. And
Thank
especially
you.
as a comedian, man, because your schedule is so wacky anyways. Like
Yes.
you guys don't have a normal human being schedule. Like you guys kind
No.
of have to run on fumes all the time, right?
I mean, yes. Most of us do. I try to put in days where I'm like, all right, today is your don't do nothing day. Like this is your rest day
Yeah.
as best you can, and then obviously your brain goes, we don't want to rest. And so it like fights it. Today was gonna be that. Like this was supposed to be all I had to do, and like I said, car troubles and getting in late and all of that. But again, it's like crazy because it could have been worse. Like I could have been stranded way further
Yeah.
in town. I did like two shows last night, and then I did a third show, and it was happened to be closer to the house. So anyway, it all worked out. But yeah, schedules are the best of us figure out a way to make stuff work in a timely manner, and
Sure.
the rest of us just kind of just are flailing,
Right. Just getting left behind.
just getting left behind. Yeah.
Well, hey, we usually like to start this podcast by letting people know how we're connected because it's called Connectable. And
Mm-hmm.
so you and I are connected. We actually met in person for the first time or over Zoom for the first time 5 minutes ago.
5 minutes.
But I got connected to you because of your Fourth and 10 podcast. And I've been a,
Mm,
a fan for a while now.
thank you.
Especially if you're a sports fan and you love just sports culture and you love sports debate, like you definitely need to check out the Fourth and 10 podcast because they do an
Yeah.
incredible job. It's three comedians that go at it and every topic that's pops up in the sports world, and it's hilarious. So you guys
Yeah.
definitely need to check that out. But I mean, it's pretty simple. Like I just got connected to you guys through the podcast, and then
Mm-hmm.
I reached out, and you were kind enough to join us. So
Yeah.
pretty simple. But I mean, tell us a little bit about you, man. Like, how did you get started in comedy, and how did you even get involved in that world?
Man, comedy. I always tell people no comedian starts comedy in a good place. Like I've never met a
Yeah,
comedian who was like, my life is perfect and I want to go tell jokes now.
yeah,
It's just not the case. So for me, it was I was in my final year of college. I was struggling on several levels, whether it was academically, psychologically, all of it. And uh, it started. My friend of mine went. We went to Chicago on our way to Detroit. Supposed to go see my grandmother, and he was like, "Let's go to Chicago." His brother had just started doing comedy, and I was just talking. And his brother was like, "Oh man, you funny. You should be a comedian." And I go, "I was thinking about it. I was not thinking about it. Like I never thought about it once."
yeah.
And so I said that, and my friend overheard it, and he kind of was just like, "Oh, you were thinking about it," and then I was like, "Oh, I have to try now,"
Gotta
So
put you on the spot. Yeah,
yeah, and so like when we got back home, I started looking up open mics and stuff like that, and probably about six, maybe like almost a year later, it was the first time I tried. With on the podcast, Damon Sumner, we started at the same
yeah.
time, the same
Wow.
day. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, what
Like
was
we
your
met
what
each
was
other at
your
church.
okay? No, sorry, not to cut you off, but what was your
Huh.
experience with comedy prior to that? Like, I mean, like, I guess as far as your knowledge, or like, were you a huge fan of comedy, or you know,
No, not. I mean, I
really?
I didn't watch like a lot of my peers. They watched a lot of stand up growing up, or
Yeah,
I didn't watch a lot of stand up. I didn't know many comedians. I watched like Mad TV and Saturday Night Live. Like I enjoyed that,
got
but
it.
it wasn't like ooh, I know the who's the stand ups. I didn't know specials like that. So I remember one of the first shows that I saw live was in college.
Okay,
It was one of those college shows, and I saw two different comedians who I'm now, peers with, which is
yeah,
odd to think like, man, I remember watching you in college, and now like we on shows together.
that's wild.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's kind of like it, kind of between the me talking myself into a corner and just kind of seeing it, and then also just not being in a good place and like trying to, flailing as a young man trying to figure stuff out. It kind of just hit me, and I just signed up, and I've been running into Damon and somebody said we just kind of talked about doing comedy, and I tell him all the time. I kind of just followed his lead in the
Yeah,
beginning. I was like, "You out? Sure, I'll follow that." Like I don't know. And then
yeah,
now I'm like 12 years in, and happy I follow.
that's awesome. So obviously, like it's like definitely a weird start to the comedy thing. Like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then you kind of found yourself in that world. But like, at
yeah.
what point did you fall in love with the, like, I guess you call it like the art of comedy, like where you really started
Ooh.
studying the people who were doing it, and like when did that hit you?
I think the love. I think you hit. You probably hit different levels in a relationship. You hit love at a different levels, right?
Sure.
So I feel like initially the love came the first time I was on stage,
Okay.
right? Just being like, wow, this is crazy. Like I've never felt anything like this.
Yeah.
And then the love was tested, and that's when I knew I loved it. Probably the second or third time I was on stage. I think it was second time where I just bombed terribly. This is a
Yeah.
terrible bomb. And I remember being like, this hurts.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
don't like this.
Yeah.
But I also was like, but I want more. And that's let me know, like, oh, I
Mm.
love this. Like, I wasn't like running away. Because I hear a lot of comedians talk about how, like, they start and then they do a couple good shows and one bomb and they don't do it again for like a year. And I was just like, nah, the competitive sports like gene in me that I grew
Yeah.
up playing was just like, oh, that's not gonna be my last at bat. I got to get back up there. I got to try again. So,
Yeah.
that was probably another level of love. But then I think it really hit when, like I said, me and Damon started at the same time, and then he moved to China.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he moved. Yeah, he moved to China, and I was kind of left with the decision like I don't have my person I'm following.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so do I want this? And then it was kind of like him encouraging me from across the world,
Yeah.
messaging me and stuff like that, and then me saying, all right, do this. Like, this is something I want to do. And then one of my best friends in the world was battling cancer, and he
Hmm.
just believed in me,
Hmm.
even when I sucked.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, you gonna be good. And I was like, you're crazy. This is not
Yeah.
good. But I think him believing me kind of just kept propelling me to like keep going, keep going, keep going. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
I was telling you before we started recording, and people on this podcast know, like, I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy. Like,
yeah.
it fascinates me. It's something I never want to do ever
Okay.
because it terrifies me, even the thought of it. But I love
Mm,
watching it, and I appreciate what you guys do because sometimes I don't think people realize how difficult that is.
it's very hard.
Even if you did a 5 minute set, that will
Yeah.
probably be the 5 longest minutes of your life
It
if you've never
is.
done it. You know what I'm saying?
It
But
is
the
100%.
bombing thing is always interesting to me because I feel like I hear it all the time from different comedians on podcasts. So, like, when you bomb as a comedian, it's the worst feeling in the world as the comedian on stage, but it's
Mm.
probably one of the funniest things as a fellow
Woo.
comedian when you're watching. They're like, this is awesome. Like, we love watching this person bomb because you just know that you can relate to the feeling,
Yep.
but it's still funny from the outside.
Yeah.
So, like, take us through a little bit, like the first time you bombed, like really bombed. Obviously, it's an awful feeling, but like, I mean, how do you feel
How do you
physically?
feel? You
Like all that
want to
stuff.
hide. You
Yeah.
want to run away, and you're the least. You're the person who has the least ability to hide because there's a spotlight on you. So
Yeah.
even if you got off stage, they've all seen you already. They've seen
Yeah.
every color of your shirt, they know what you look like.
Yeah.
And so it's a very lonely feeling.
Yeah.
And I always tell people the moment after, depending on who you are, it can be a very powerful feeling
Sure.
because once you bomb, you go, that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
nothing can hurt me now. Like
Yeah.
all right, like it didn't feel good, but like you check your vitals, like I'm still breathing. I'm all right. Like I'm all right.
Yeah.
And so like yeah, my first bomb, I remember. I think the first bomb was interesting because I remember like I did the same jokes I did the first time that
Yeah.
went well, but then I realized they only went well because like a lot of the crowd was there for Damon and they also knew me.
Oh.
And so they were like, "Oh man, you're great." And then when I wasn't around, it was just like other comedians and people who didn't know me. They were like, "This, we don't like this.
Yeah.
This isn't good."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, it's not." And I had like a whole act out. And I just remember there was a comic who I, respect, who grew to respect, who had been in a while. And like I do this whole act out. I'm on the ground. I'm acting this thing out, and no one's laughing. I remember him folding his arms
Oh
slowly
no.
and then shaking his head.
Oh.
So as I'm getting up from the act out, like off the ground, and just like
Yeah.
silence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of significant one. And like, if you ever hear Damon Sumner again, we'll keep referencing him because me and him started together.
Yeah.
But we talk oftentimes about our worst bomb was on the same show,
Oh
uh,
no.
where it was my uncle was just being supportive and was like, "Hey, you want to come do our high school reunion?" And I was like, at the time, young comedy, I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then it was me and Damon call our nemesis, which is like older black people. Like they just don't like us. Like they're just like, what are you kids? at the time, I was like, what are you young men doing? You know,
Yeah.
like they're like significant, like our parents' age, you know?
Sure.
And I remember we both were on the show, and Damon, I think I was like, "You go first." This is my uncle. You go first, and then I'll
Yeah.
go. And then he bombed,
Ooh.
and I'm watching. It's not. It wasn't one of those fun times. Usually, it's fun
Yeah.
if you've already gone up, but when
Sure.
you know you're next, you're just like, I can only describe it as like, it's probably how a chicken would feel if he like walked into like a rotisserie house. You know what I mean? And was just like, oh, it's coming for me next. Like this is my future.
Yeah.
You
Can't
know?
do anything about it.
So, yeah, so he bombed, and then I went up and then bombed, and then I just remember like they didn't even want to give us the food that they said. They were like, y'all gonna still stay here and eat? You know, like I don't want to go home, and I was like, I do want to go home, but I would like to get some food. You know,
Yeah.
like I can't take back the bomb, but like I don't want to
Oh
have an empty stomach and a bomb. So yeah, it was bad.
man. That's yeah. I can't even imagine. I mean,
Whew.
and I feel like everybody, when people talk about, bombing, when comedians talk about it,
Yeah.
it always feels like it's right away, that first joke, it doesn't hit. It's like, oh, it's gonna be a rough,
Oh
15
yeah.
or 10 or whatever you have.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of them are looking for that light in the back or someone to say like,
Ooh,
hey,
yeah. Someone save me. Yeah.
let's wrap it up or something. Well, then it's like you think once you exit the stage, that's it. But then a lot of times if you have someone following you, like the next comedian kind of has to say something, right? Like they have to address what happened.
Sometimes they do. I didn't. I didn't reference Damon at all. I
Well,
just
because
was
you
like,
yeah,
I was like, we don't need to. We don't need to talk. Let's just power through. Like, I
just
was
get
just like, I
through.
get to my jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I've definitely bombed, and someone's come up after and been like, "Man, that guy sucked,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "I thought we was on the same team. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
You betrayed me, you know?"
Yeah. They
Yeah,
had
that's
that
part of it
opportunity.
though.
They smelled or saw blood in the
Yeah,
water. It's
for
like
sure.
opportunity for a joke.
Yep.
Man. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. When it comes to following people,
Mm.
um, is there someone specific? If people don't know, you're in the Atlanta area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure there's a bunch of comedians that you guys you're close with that you see, nightly when you do your thing. Is
Uh-huh.
there someone when you see them on the lineup, you're like, man, like I know I'm good at this, but I don't really want to follow this person.
Oh, um, so there's two instances. One who is not local,
Okay.
but he's this dude named Rory Scovel.
Okay.
He has like a Comedy Central half hour Netflix special. And I remember one time he came to town and he was on a show, and the booker was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put you after him." And I remember thinking like, "Why would you do this?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but also I did really well after that because like you learn how to ride a wave.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's like if you do well, I don't have to be better than you. I just don't have to ride your wave.
Yeah.
So I remember that specifically one time having to follow him, and I was like, at first I was like, but then I was like, ride the wave.
That's
But
interesting. Yeah.
Clayton English, if you
Okay.
don't know who Clayton English is, I remember there was a TV show called Last Comic Standing a few years
Yeah.
back, and he was the last winner of that.
Okay.
He's from Atlanta, and he is easily the best stand-up comedian I've ever seen.
Really?
I tell him this all the time. I was like, you're just better than us. You're better than everybody who does this, and it's honestly
Wow.
not fair. And everybody knows you're better than them, and it's just a matter of time before the world knows. And every time I followed him, I bombed.
Yeah.
Every time. There's no more laughs left. Like I was like, oh, you
Yeah.
took all the laughs. You took all the
Ah.
laughs, all the good ideas,
Yeah.
everything. And he's just my favorite to watch. So yeah, Clayton English is one that we all know. It's like, all right, that's you're battling. If he's on the lineup, you're fighting for second place. You remember the old Larry Bird story when he came in the 3-point contest,
Yeah.
and he goes, "Which one of y'all is coming in second?"
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. We're all like, "Which one of us is coming in second?" Because Clayton is
Oh
the
man.
winner. Yeah.
Well, you guys are all competitive too. Like, that's the interesting thing about comedy. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but anytime you hear comedians talk, it does feel very much like how athletes talk.
Yeah.
Like there is a competitive nature to it. Like you guys are all on the same team for the most part, right? I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but
Right.
and you probably, I think it feels like it's a pretty, for the most part, tight knit community that you guys want to see each other
Yeah.
succeed, but you want to smoke the other person.
You want to.
what I mean?
I tell comedians, especially younger comedians, if we're on a show together, like a showcase show, I always say to the person in front of me, I say, your job tonight is to bury me. Right? That's your job.
Right.
And I tell the person behind me, my job is to bury you.
Right.
And if we all bury each other,
Yeah.
we did great.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the plan. So there is a competitive aspect to it, but at the end of the day, I think the more mature you get in, you realize like I'm not fighting anybody but myself. Like
Right.
that's the only competition really is like how well I think I can do. So
Right.
there's a
Which
little
makes
bit of
sense.
that, but at the same time, it's just like any day you could get it, and so you know what I mean. Like you
Right.
could face that bomb, so you're not like I'm
Yeah.
better than you. You're just like stay in my lane. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like because that bomb is sniffing out, it's trying to find you. So you just kind of like
Yeah.
you don't pay all the other stuff a lot of attention.
Right. Which makes a ton of sense. Is
Yeah,
there a personality or because obviously there's so many different personalities, styles of comedy. Like I've been to plenty of comedy shows here in Sacramento, and you might have someone that has the energy of someone like Kevin Hart, right?
yeah,
And then you go to someone who has like a very monotone, dry sense of humor,
yeah.
and it's like you could have that all in one night. Is there a
Mhm.
certain type of personality that's a little bit more difficult? Like you mentioned waves, right? Is there a personality that's like, who I'm gonna still ride the wave, but this wave's a little bit harder, maybe because it's in uh, direct opposition to how you are. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No, I always say the hard Clayton is the best comedian there is, but the hardest
Sure.
person I've ever had to follow is always is a comedian here in town named Brent Starr, and he's a drag queen,
Okay.
and he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
just like people cannot stop laughing, but he's
Yeah.
so high energy,
Mm,
right? And like I'm not necessarily low energy, but like I'm nowhere near that. And like
right.
he has like a song, he'll have like it's like a show,
Yeah.
and he'll pack it, and I'm just like, we're not even doing the same thing. Like,
Right.
I mean, he's doing comedy for sure, no doubt about it. Like I'm not taking
Sure.
away from him. I'm just saying like that is the show. Like if
Right.
somebody paid money, you got a whole show. So if I had to follow that, I don't know what you want.
Right.
I don't know what else you want, you know?
Yeah.
So usually it's like any kind of like I think like different act,
Right.
you know what I mean? Whether it be like music or something like that, it's like yeah, it becomes a little more difficult.
I heard the music thing's tough, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a weird. I feel like it's kind of looked at in a weird way in comedy sometimes. Like
It
there's
can't
kind of it's kind of a divided opinions on the dude who brings
Yeah,
the
I think
guitar
the
out.
thing is if it's good, then I feel like people who really respect the craft and aren't in it to be like these weird gatekeepers.
Yeah.
If it's good, they're like, all right, I see the jokes. But if you're just
Sure.
like leaning on it
Right.
as like I just play music and I don't
Yeah.
have jokes,
Right.
then comedians are gonna be like, all right, well then go to a music open mic. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Um, well, that brings me. So you and I were talking just a little bit about how it feels like from the outside looking in, the game has changed quite a bit for stand-up
Hmm.
comics. Like it seems like it's not enough just to go, do your nightly set or your weekly sets, and you gotta like it feels like people have a podcast and then people have to get creative with other stuff in social media. It's like you're constantly producing this content. And in addition to that, you're trying to create a really tight set that you
Hmm.
can, perfect and get right on stage. Um, like what is that whole process like? Is it how much has it changed since you started comedy? And like how difficult is it now having to balance all those things, every day?
Yeah. I think it's changed since I started. When I started, I think people kind of like poo pooed at internet, quote unquote internet comedians, and they were like, "Oh, you're not true to stand up." And people tried to, and now those same people are asking those comedians how do they grow a scene,
Yeah.
grow their pages and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's changed for sure. People are more open to it. I think at the end of the day, for me personally, I think you got to do stuff that you love to do, not what like is trendy, because then you if you're waiting for a trend, you're not setting a trend, you're like
Right.
waiting for it, and I just don't believe in doing something. I believe in identifying what I love about a thing, and if I don't love a thing creatively in this space that like has opened up my eyes and like opened up my mind and kind of allowed me to be a little more free creatively, I don't want to force a thing into that space, because I
Sure.
feel like it kind of dilutes the purpose for me. So like you're not gonna see me doing a bunch of TikToks, but I respect
Yeah.
people that do because I've seen it. It's very difficult to do.
Sure.
But it's just not something I figured out a way to love how to do it yet.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's changed. I think people are more open to it now. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, and man, I'm you would probably know, I'm blanking on the comedian's name, but he had the special on Netflix during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic.
Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham. Thank you. I watched it. I can't
Yeah,
remember his name. Um,
yeah,
it's a really interesting, super creative. really interesting. I'll be honest, it wasn't. I've said it here before. It wasn't really my
Sure.
cup of tea because and that being said, I didn't know that much about him going into it.
Right.
So probably just not my style. But it was very creative. But like it didn't feel like uh, as much comedy as it was just a really creative piece of art. But
Right.
um, again, like you said, if that's what he loves to do, and he wants to take that route, like who can judge that? You know,
Yeah, there's a freedom that the internet provides that I think is really good. You know, like comedians
sure,
can like a lot of times the format of stand up comedy, as much as we think it's for us, it might not be for what we're trying to do. Right? Like perfect example is if you ever hear Hassan Minaj talk
yeah,
about his Homecoming King special, and he talked about how like what he tried to do on stage as a stand up wasn't wasn't transferring the same way. But when he did it in this like one man show with pictures and all this other stuff, it was like, oh, now it makes sense, you
right,
know. And so I think the same thing happens with the internet or TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Sometimes you could take an idea and try to force it through the stand up like hole,
yeah,
and really maybe it should be going through another hole, and it could be a lot more free. So
yeah.
I'm here for creating the way that they're meant to create and not like trying to force it, you know.
Right. Well, I guess at the end of the day, if you're making people laugh, whatever medium you're using, like that's the main thing. Like if you're a funny person, because I'm sure there's been a ton of stand-up comics that got a TV show and got a pilot, and then it just is like, yeah, this doesn't that
Yeah,
comedy doesn't translate to this pilot, but then they go back to stage and just kill it, and
kill.
vice
Yeah.
versa too.
Yep.
Which is an interesting part of the whole thing. It's like this constant, it's like this living, breathing, growing thing all the time that you
It
guys have to
is.
kind of constantly you know, evolve with. And at the same time, you still have to focus on making people laugh. Like if you're not making
Yeah.
people laugh, then the whole thing is kind of all for naught, right?
Right.
So that's interesting. So okay, let me ask you this because
Hmm.
I really enjoy watching like the roast battles, and I
Okay.
really enjoy just that humor. It's funny to me. I
Yeah.
know it's not for everybody because I think some people it's just mean, for
Yeah.
some people. But do you enjoy that? And is there a certain kind of personality? Because it feels like the more I watch it, it seems like okay, I think some people because like initially I thought okay, all comedians can do this, but
Mm.
the more I watch it, I'm like no, I don't know if all comedians have it in them
It
because
definitely
you watch
can.
someone like Jeff Ross, there's a
Right.
reason why he does what he does, right?
He can
I
go
saw
through that.
the
Yeah.
YouTube stuff where he goes into a prison. It's like I don't know if everybody could do that. Um,
Yeah.
and you see other people. It's like I think they try to dabble in that world, but they're not built for it. So,
Right.
is that something that you enjoy? Can you do it, or is that something you stay away from?
Ooh. I've been asked to do it twice.
Oh,
Both
really?
times, just I accepted begrudgingly.
Okay.
The first time was like a friend. Both times, I think this was a friend of mine was moving away,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Hey, can you do this?" And I was like, "Cause you're my friend, sure."
Yeah.
Other normal circumstances, no. You know.
Yeah.
And so I don't. Here's the thing. I don't think I'm bad at them. I don't
Yeah.
like myself when I do them because I know who I am,
Yeah.
and so or who I've been in the past. Like I can be a mean person,
Sure.
and
Okay.
that just allows me to do that in a way because I feel like comedy is. So two things happen. The good roast is like usually the best roast when like people know each other.
Sure.
When you don't really know the person, it's just a generic kind of like burn. It's like not gonna like be
Right.
fun or whatever. But like both times I've like known the person, and also I've known the people on stage a little bit.
Sure.
But it's just a comedy. Like you're sizing people up constantly,
Right.
and so like as a person, I don't normally get those jokes off because I'm not like trying to be that person.
Right.
But when you like you take the reins off, I'm like, oh, I don't. You might not like me after this, you know. Like
Yeah.
I've been sizing you up for months, just like little things that you don't even recognize, and now I
Right.
have like this free shot. And so every time I've done it, I've always had like a couple jokes like, well, that was good, but like I hope we're still cool after this, you know.
Yeah.
It's just not it's not something I want. It's not a lane I want to stay in. I put it like that.
Sure. Well, I feel like that's the case for a lot of people I've heard. They're like, it's funny, but there is a lot of that stuff that's running through the back of their mind, like this could end really bad. It
Yeah.
might be funny for a lot of people, but as far as
And
this
the
relationship,
people, yeah, the people who are the best at it don't care about the thing in the back. They're just like you're getting everything.
right,
And yeah, I'm more defensive with mine. So like if somebody gets me, then I'm like, all right, like gloves off, you know.
right. Right.
And I'm not gonna be generic. I'm gonna be like, yo, I know your insecurities. Like I'll get that. You know what I mean? Like I've been sizing you up.
Yeah.
Like I know I know what makes you cry. You know, like
Right.
and
Right.
then I go there, and that's not. I don't like myself as a person when I do that. So I try to
Yeah.
stay away from them. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, and that's
Yeah.
why some of those like Comedy Central roasts were so weird because you could
Mm-hmm.
tell that some of the people's like, you're roasting a celebrity, so you're basing a lot of off what you hear on the in the
Right.
media, in the news cycle, and so some
Right.
of these shots, I'm like, ooh, that's a
Yeah.
brutal shot. But I guess I mean, if you guys aren't really friends in real
And
life, then I guess there's no consequence here. There's, they didn't really like you in the first place, so
right.
you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But
My favorite roast of that was I think it was Justin Bieber.
that was a
If
good
you
one.
go and it was Hannibal Buress though. Do you remember his? Because he was just like, I don't like your music. Like it wasn't even like a
Yeah,
setup punch. He was like, I don't like you as a he just was like so honest.
right.
And I just
I
thought like
love that.
that's how I roast. I'm just like things I don't like, I'm just gonna say those things. And I'm
Right,
like, it's probably gonna hurt your feelings, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a good way to go in those things though too, right? Because like when you watch those things, after a while, it's like, okay, you kind of know the person, you understand that each person's probably going to attack a very
Right.
specific thing, right? And it's like, okay, we heard this, the last, two comedians have said it, or the last two speakers have
Right.
said this. So when you have someone like Burris who goes kind of a different direction, like it is really funny because you weren't
Yeah.
expecting it, and it's just like you said, just pretty honest,
Yeah. Changing
it,
pace is always good in
yeah,
comedy. That's just like a cool thing in comedy. If you can change the pace and misdirect
right,
in any kind of way, like switch up the kind of like how things are going, the flow, it's gonna get a response. And usually, it's a if you're good at it, it's gonna get a good response.
right. Well, I always thought it was interesting with a guy like he's not my favorite comedian by any means, but I find him super fascinating as Anthony Jeselnik
Yeah,
because he is very precise. It seems like, and it very much a hard right. And even if I think I know where he's going,
yeah,
he goes a little bit further right than I thought. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
that was
And that's a
dark.
skill.
Yeah,
People, and I think that's the worst. I always say like people like him are the worst thing that happened to comedy because he makes that look easy,
sure,
and it's not
sure,
easy. It requires a lot of like thinking and placement, like so much. But then the novice will come and go, I'm just speaking the truth, or I'm just doing this, and it's like, yeah, but you haven't crafted it in a way that like
right,
is any kind of digestible. So you're just coming off like a crazy person, you know?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah,
speaking of crazy people, hecklers, like hecklers
mm.
is a weird thing because I mean, you think about it, it's like you guys, it's like your job, you're doing your job up there,
I'm
right?
at
And
work.
and
Yeah,
just like anybody else's job, you might come into work in a bad mood, and if the right person crosses you at the wrong time, it's gonna be a huge problem. You'll
right.
lose your mind, you'll snap at them, and then it's a huge problem later. For you guys, you have an audience when it happens. So if you guys
Yeah,
are having, obviously, so many of you guys are so good at handling hecklers. But I'm sure there's some days where it's like you're almost stepping on stage like I'm just waiting. Someone's coming up, they're gonna say
yeah,
something stupid, and I'm ready to go. So
yeah.
like, what's your philosophy when it comes to hecklers? Like, how do you handle that? And then maybe what's a good story where a heckler, you just gave it to him.
Yeah, no, it depends on my mood, right? Like
Sure,
my philosophy is to play the like disappointed dad role. So I'll do a thing where like especially if because I'm not normally trying to talk to you, right? I'm trying to
sure,
talk to everybody. And
right,
so what I'll say is and something I often say is something along the lines of just like, "Hey, listen, like I know you want to say these things and like I'm more than open to listen to you after the show. But well, here's the thing. I can see everybody and you can't. You only see me. And I
right,
can see how much they hate you right now. You know what I mean? And so like I
yeah,
just wanted to help you out.
yeah,
Like you're better than this, you know, and kind of like help them through that, right?
yeah,
That's kind of like because normally you don't want to push too hard that you become the bad guy.
sure,
That's the thing, right?
right,
And then sometimes, unfortunately, you just have to be the bad guy.
right,
And
yeah,
I've had a moment where there was a lady who kept heckling, like she just kept, and it wasn't. I think what tricked me off was like it wasn't she just heckled me. She heckled like people in front of me who are my friends, and so I
ah,
get very protective of my friends.
it makes
And I
sense,
just remember she was there on a date, and I kept as soon as she started talking to me, I said something like I started talking to her date, and I go, man, I bet you're embarrassed. You didn't know she was gonna be like this. I was like, dog, if you want to break up with her, it's like just walk out right now. If you need help doing it, I'll help you. Like we can figure out a plan. I'm like, you
Oh,
can't be proud of her right now. This is the worst. Like, and she's
oh,
yelling at me while this is happening, and I'm just talking to him
just
as if
completely
she's
ignoring.
not there. And I'm just like, oh man, look at her. She's still doing it. And like, you probably thought you was gonna take her out, go to a comedy show, maybe go back to the crib. Like, it'd be a good night. And now she's just embarrassing you. And you have to take care of this. We have to drive this person home, and you have to pretend like you care. She's okay. Like all this, you didn't. If you had it your way, you'd probably just leave her here. But you seem like a nice guy. You're gonna take care of her. But we all know you don't want to. Like just kind of like,
Oh, just let him. What was he
yeah,
doing? Because that puts him
yeah,
in a weird spot, right? Because he might want to laugh.
exactly.
Did he laugh?
No, he couldn't.
Oh,
He couldn't laugh,
but he
but
wanted to.
everyone was,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so yeah, and that was my thing. I was like, I think the easy thing is like attack the person,
yeah.
and then I'm like, oh, what's another creative way? All right, I'm gonna attack who they're with
That's smart,
in a polite way to
right?
make them to hopefully let that heckler know, like, yo, there are stakes to you continue to do this. I'm
Right,
not just coming at you. I'm coming at who you're with.
right, and
You
putting
know,
them on the spot. That's
putting
interesting.
them on the
Yeah,
spot. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's like when I go to a show, like I hate when it happens. You don't want to see it happen, but when the comic's good at it, it is fun when they can handle it well. It's like, all right,
oh
well,
yeah,
if we have to go down this road, at least this is going to be a memorable thing rather than I've been to
yeah.
one show where they were getting heckled a little bit, and I don't know if they were a newer comedian or what, but they were not prepared. I'm like,
Mm.
ugh. I feel like this person's getting the best of you right now, and it's not a great look.
Yeah. The trick I saw somebody do is, especially if you want to win, whatever they yell, repeat it, right? So
Okay,
if somebody's like, "Yo, you're not funny," you go, "I'm not funny," and that what that does is it gives you time to think of a response,
that's smart.
but also the crowd is like, in my mind, it's like you're establishing dominance. Like you're not. I'm not talking with you. I'm regurgitating what you're saying to show that I'm in control. Like
Right,
what you said doesn't affect me. I'm just gonna say it back to you, and
right,
then proceed. So yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot of tricks that like I keep learning. I'm 12 years in. I still learn.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm sure it's just a never ending cycle.
Constantly learning.
And I feel like it's you guys have a weird, you guys just live in a weird world because I don't think you can escape this. But I imagine the heckler is trying to be. I mean, obviously they've probably been drinking. It doesn't help the
Mm-hmm.
situation. And then I imagine there's something inside of them. It's like I can be funny too. It's
Oh
like
yeah, and
no,
that's
you can't.
normally I lead with. I'm like, oh, you're a coward. I'll say there's a coward in the building.
Yeah.
Somebody too scared to sign up for the open mic and
Ooh.
bomb like the rest of us. You want to skip steps, do you? Like that's what kind of like
Oof.
I'll acknowledge that. Like I know you want to be me, even the worst version of me. You want that, and yet you're too much of a coward
Yeah.
to just sign up for an open mic. There are no rules. Anybody can sign up for an open mic, and yet you decided to come and sit down and
Yeah.
skip steps. You coward. I
Yeah.
just.
I'm sure they love that.
Oh man, they love it so much. At least everybody around them,
Yeah, for
they
sure.
hate it. Yeah.
I've heard from different, and this has been like a consistent thing, and I don't want this to sound like a sexist thing, but I've
Sure.
heard that bachelorette parties are
They're the
tough.
worst. No,
Okay,
they're the
that's
worst.
so that's like a consistent thing across the comedian world.
Bulletproof. They're bulletproof.
Okay,
You can't win. Like you just have
yeah,
every time I see a sash, I'm just like, I hope they're nice people.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because it's like it's a night where it's supposed to be about one person,
sure,
and all we're doing on a show is it about everybody else but that person. Like
right,
all they want you to do is acknowledge them. They want to be able to talk when they want to talk. Like we're asking them to be quiet.
right,
Why? You know what I'm saying? Like at a night where they want to be as loud as possible.
right,
And
right,
so, and if you attack too hard, you're the bad guy. A group
right,
of women, and you're just like, you stupid, you stupid. Like they're gonna be like, everybody's gonna be like, yo, this is a joyous moment for her. Why are you a jerk? And I'm like, cause she's messing me up at my job.
right,
you know, like she came to my job and was just like, don't do your job. And I'm
yeah,
like, but I need to be good at this,
right.
to keep it. And you're
Oof.
like making me that not possible right now. Yeah, they're the hardest.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't talk about it enough, but like bachelor parties are not that much better.
Oh, I can
They
imagine.
also they
Yeah,
also want you to like talk about them. Like they'll be like, "This guy's getting married. You should roast him." I was like, "You think I came here to just? I've worked on these jokes for years to be like, oh, let me throw it all out the window on this stranger that I just met.
right.
Like I'm not a, you know what I mean? Like no, I'm
Yeah,
not some kind of like hilarious assassin. I have a
yeah,
job to do. Like I don't
yeah.
just yeah."
It's not like you're making balloon animals for everybody at the party.
Yeah, I
You know
think
what I
that's
mean?
part of like the belittling of comedy. Like people don't respect it as a thing
Sure.
because everybody thinks like they can do it because people make it look easy because
Right.
they've been doing it for years.
Right.
And so people are like, I'm not interrupting anything. You're just talking. It's like, no, I've thought about this for a long time. I wrote it out. I performed it across the country, and I'm
Right.
trying to give it to all these people. And here you are being like, it's nothing. And I'm like, that's not true.
Right. Man,
Yeah.
that's gotta be the most frustrating thing. And that's not even like a new thing, right? That's something that's happened for like since the beginning of time
Beginning.
when
Yeah.
comedy started. It's just like people can't help themselves. It's a bizarre thing to me. I
Yeah.
don't get it, but
Yeah.
you know, some people can't
I
help
mean,
themselves.
comedies never. I don't think is there even an award in the Oscars for like best comedy?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think
I'm,
so.
I
I
don't
feel like there should
exactly.
be, but
There
yeah,
should
no.
be, right? Like, but they don't even
Yeah.
acknowledge it as a genre to give an
Right.
award to. But
Right.
it'll be like best documentary, best like there's best everything.
Right. Except for
What
comedy.
comedy? I find that odd.
I think there is, but I think they group it in with musicals, don't they?
If they do,
If
maybe
they
I'm not
do,
100% sure. That's possible though.
yeah. Which it seems silly, but I don't know. They don't
Yeah,
care what my opinion is. So,
yeah.
um, so I want to be respectful of your time and get you out
Are
of
you
here in a
good?
decent amount of time. But let's see. I had a question for you. Oh, okay. So this might be a weird question, but obviously, if anybody watches stand up, you know that the majority of stand ups have some kind of drink on stage. It might be water, it might be some kind of alcohol. Like, what is your drink of choice? And like, how did you land on that? Like, was that a process to get to that drink of
Ooh,
choice, or
that's
was
good.
it you just whatever you like that night, or is it the same thing every night? Or I'm assuming it's the same thing.
No, no, no. So, I'll try to read the crowd, right?
Oh,
If the
interesting.
crowd is like they're kind of like they're a fun crowd,
Yeah.
I'll come out there with like some sort of like whiskey. I might not even drink it, but I'll have it,
Okay. Okay.
right? And I'll
Yeah.
put it on the stool just to kind of be like, hey, I'm here to have fun too, right?
Yeah.
And I'll have it there. If they're kind of like a laid back kind of like listening crowd, you know what I mean? They're not necessarily a bad crowd, but they're just kind of like listening and like kind of like, okay, it'll be water.
Okay.
Right? I have water because
Yeah.
it's like, I just got to maintain. Like, I try to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
So my drink will do that. Like, I did a bar show. I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday, I did a show in a I did three shows, and one of them was in a very suburban, very like nice part of town. And I had a glass of wine, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I had a glass of red wine. I traveled 30 minutes south, and I'm doing a show at a dive bar.
Yeah.
And when I'm there, normally I have like a PBR,
Okay.
right? Because it
Yeah.
fits. I would look weird with a glass of wine
Right.
at the PBR. You know what I mean? Where everybody's drinking PBR.
Sure.
So my thing is like you want people to see you and go, oh, okay, I like what you're doing. You're one
Yeah.
of us.
Right. Right.
You
It's
know what
not
I
jarring
mean?
when they see you with the glass of wine up there at the dive bar.
Yeah.
Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you have like a joke to go with it, which I could, but it's just like I like the connect. I like the idea of connecting with people. So if I find little things that like help me connect
Yeah.
before I even have to open my mouth, that's a thing. It's small things I learned when I started. Like a small thing I learned is like when my name is called on stage, I smile because it's
Right.
the first time people are seeing me. So
Right.
like just making sure that like I'm just like looking like I'm excited to be there. And
Right.
it,
Right.
you start because you're tearing down walls every moment. You're trying to earn respect to get the laughs off. And so little things like, what drink is everybody having or smiling or, eye contact at certain individuals. Like it just all there's like little bitty, levels and percentages gained in a more successful show by, crossing off a lot of these things. So I try to take advantage of all of them, the stuff that I learned over the time.
Yeah. No, and I love that. And obviously, like you said, this show is about connecting, and
Yeah.
and I personally feel like comedy is a huge, super powerful connector of
Mm.
a way to connect people. And it's I guess one of the questions I had for you, obviously, my favorite is Chappelle. Like
Yeah.
going through high school, Chappelle show was at its height, and
Right.
you couldn't go to a high school rally where you wouldn't hear
Somebody. Yeah.
the Rick James sketch or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. Yeah.
which made it a lot of fun. I think like the teachers probably hated it, but
Of course.
it was at the height at that point. And then obviously once I started like watching his stand up, I'm like, oh man, like this dude is incredible. And
Yeah.
obviously he's hit just another level now. That being said, a lot of what he's done recently has been super controversial, right?
Right.
And different things that he's shared, and there's like a whole nother conversation about that. But
Sure.
um, for you personally, like how do you balance being able to connect with people? Because you obviously want people to laugh, you want them to connect, but you also might be, as you're writing, you might have maybe some stuff that's a little bit edgy, some stuff
Hmm.
that's going to push the boundaries a little bit, where you want to, like, your ultimate goal is to make them laugh, but you also, I imagine, you want them to think. Like, your perspective as a comedian is very unique to this world,
Mm.
and I imagine that you want to say, okay, I have a perspective on this, you guys may not like this, but I still want you to be able to connect with it, and like you said, tear down walls. But some of those walls may go up a little bit
Hmm.
with some
Hmm.
of the perspectives or jokes you share. So like, how do you balance um you know content that's going to maybe push the boundaries a little bit and push your audience's perspective versus like connecting with them and making sure you don't lose them?
Yeah, no, I love that question. I think what I try to do is never talk about anything outside of myself,
Hmm.
right? And
Okay.
so, like, I feel like if you talk about the Chappelle situation, like, I feel like a lot of that material was something that was, even though it happened in a way to him, as far as like that relationship, it's still someone else's story to tell,
Right.
right? And so that was one of the things I learned because I watched it like everybody else and saw the kind of response, and I was just like that. And I'm happy like I learned this early on, but it's like if it didn't happen, if it's not like I, it's hard for you to hate what I'm about to say if I'm telling you this is my experience, as
Hmm.
opposed to me saying here's what I think about this thing that I'm not connected to at all,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I think there's ways to put yourself in situations that aren't necessarily your story,
Right.
but I think it has to start with like how you relate to it and not just like, oh, I'm friends, but like show the depths of that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Help people
Yeah.
understand like that it means something because it is like you said, comedy is a powerful tool. I always like to tell people like comedians, we are comedians, but any other timeline, we're probably just snake oil salesmen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like the best of us aren't even comedians. We're really like, I call us like facilitators of community, right?
Yeah. I like that.
Meaning there is no reason for anybody to show up to a live comedy show, right?
Yeah.
Netflix has everything that you have. The internet and Twitter is full of funnier people. You can scroll and get your laughs. So I ask myself, why do people show up, right? And
Yeah.
the answer is easy. It's because people crave community,
Yeah.
right?
That's good.
They crave to be around other people. And so as a comedian, and this is why I love what I do, is because I don't know anybody in the crowd's race, religion, political. They literally is a bunch of strangers who could have varying degrees of all of these things.
Yeah.
But if I can manage to get them all to laugh at this one thing, then it reminds me that we're not as different as we think we are,
Yeah.
because we can agree on this, you
Right.
know? And
Yeah.
so if I talk about stuff that's edgy or whatever, it's not to offend anybody. I hate people when they like, I like offending. I don't want to offend you. If you become offended, then we can talk through it, but that's not my goal,
Hmm.
right? You can disagree with me. I'm okay. I hope that everybody doesn't agree with me. Like, that's a weird world to live in where everybody's like, no, you're always right. Like, I don't, it means I'm not
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
But I guess I say I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to connect people, and I feel like and nowadays it's like a thing where, like, I guess to answer your question, to balance it, I try to come from something that I believe in strongly. If I
Yeah.
don't love what I'm saying, I don't try to say it. If I'm not gonna say it just because everybody else is talking about it. I have to like love a position about it, or like really have investigated a part of it, and so that kind of protects me from just kind of just being out here saying whatever and have people being like, well, what is that about?
Yeah.
Because that's gonna happen now more than ever. Because I was just telling a friend, it has nothing. People like to be like, oh, people are more sensitive now, and I'm like, I don't think that's it. I think what it is for years, certain people just weren't heard. And
Uh,
now people are being heard, and you're like, well, what are you doing being mad? It's like, I've always been mad. This is the first time you heard it,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
before I had to just take it.
Right.
And so now people don't have to just take it. But this weird and beautiful thing happens is there are so many people who have no business, who in years past would have no business having a conversation with each other are having a conversation with each other.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have growing pains.
Sure.
You know, the people that Chappelle is normally talking to in the 90s, he's like, he has them, and now he has this larger group of people who now hear and say, I don't like that.
Right.
In the 80s, everybody had a gay joke.
Right.
Or, you know, white people have certain black jokes that were just like not cool, but there might not have been gay or black people in the room.
Sure.
And so now they're like, yeah, we don't like that, you know? And people are like, what do you mean you don't like that? Yeah, we didn't know you were doing this like this. And now there's enough of us that say we don't like that. Same thing with trans people, same thing, all these different people. And so I think people are having a hard time adjusting to the fact that these people who for the longest have been like marginalized and like left out of the rooms are just like, question. Like, and I think a lot of times those old jokes were like people were talking as if these people were ideas and not real people. You know? Yeah. And that's important, right? Like, I don't want to be an idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if they were doing black jokes, like, black is an idea. Black is who I am.
Right.
You know, among other things.
Yeah.
Right. But I am that. So, like, I don't, want to be an idea. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to realize. It's like these people aren't ideas. They're real people who have real things. And those things are very, not all black people going to think one way. Not all, trans people, like, and you have to deal with that too. Right. So I just think like moving in humility is important. I should say that. Yeah. It keeps you on your toes as a comedian.
Oh, for sure. Well, like I said earlier, it is a living, breathing thing that's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And that's the thing, like your craft, it's not like you can just go, do something. And it's like, well, this is like this piece of art that I created. Obviously you want people to buy it, but you're judged on the response of other people. Right. Like how funny you are is kind of judged by the audience's reaction. And then when you have a diverse audience, like you said, there's a lot of things to take into account, so that's a very interesting thing.
It's true. I just want to push back because I feel like this is maybe just me.
Yeah.
I don't, and I remember I say this on stage a lot and people think I'm crazy for saying this.
Yeah.
And I'll start shows by saying, in order for this to work, right, I cannot care what any of you think about me.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
I cannot care what any of you think about me. That doesn't mean I don't want you to have a good time.
Right.
I can't take into account every idea of what a good time is.
Right. Yeah.
I'm the bus driver. Right. I have directions that I have, and you may want me to take a left here or right here, but if I start doing that and taking everybody's left and everybody's right, we'll never get to where I need us to go.
That's good.
And so I learned early on. I had I call her a mentor. She's a friend, a comedian, Vanessa Fraction. She said, "Learn to be a thermostat and not a thermometer."
Yeah, that's good.
Right. So you set the tone. You don't adjust. Right. And I also learned that like I care more about what I say as far as like the purpose of what I'm saying, or the purpose that is not the product.
Sure.
Of what I'm saying. Like I've become a better comedian when I stopped caring if people laugh.
Which makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't care if you laugh. I believe that I can get you to laugh, but I can't base every move I have on, will they laugh? Because they changes every night.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like an impossible thing to keep reaching for. So I have to be like, am I proud of this?
Yeah.
Then if I'm proud of this, then let's do it.
Right.
If it needs work or it's incomplete, then let's pull back until we figure it out,
Yeah. No, I like that. I like the bus driver analogy because and I don't know if people think about, I don't think I've ever thought about it this way until you mentioned what you just said, but there is like a weird unspoken trust between a comedian and the audience, right? Because like you said, to make it work, they have to trust that you as the bus driver, you're going to drive safely. You're going to get to where you need to go safely. You just got to relax. Even if you hit a bump in the road, it's all good. And then you have to trust that your audience is going to be willing to listen and really listen to what you're saying. So like there is a weird, like, hey, we've got each other's back in this moment. Like, let's all work together. That's very interesting. I've never really thought about it that way.
If you ever listen to, I forgot which Richard Pryor special it is.
Okay.
It might be Live from Sunset Strip.
Okay.
But it has my favorite open. It's very similar to what I say, where he goes, and if you know the story of that set, I'm pretty sure it's the same story. But like upon the taping, he bombed the day before trying to tape this.
Okay.
Like it was like one of the worst bombs ever, right?
Yeah.
So much so he couldn't finish the show. So he comes back out the next night to tape it, and he starts the show by saying, "I need everybody to sit back, relax, and enjoy whatever the f is about to happen."
Yeah,
And I remember
that's
like
good.
that's the coolest thing I've ever heard into a microphone.
Right.
But it's like it really is like a thing. It's like, hey, like I'm in control. Sit back,
Yeah.
relax, and then just enjoy this.
Right.
And yeah, I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
Right.
To
Right.
get to that point. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
100%. No, I think that's great. That's a great perspective. I appreciate you sharing that, man.
yeah.
So I just got two more questions for you.
Go for
Um,
it.
and one I had prepared, the other one just based off what you said. But
Yeah. Okay.
obviously, like I said before, you are based in Atlanta or
Mm-hmm.
a nearby, maybe it's a nearby area. But
Yeah.
once you started, because you've talked a little bit of, just recently about the importance of community, how what you do is, I'm not going to try to repeat what you said,
Okay.
but like you're a facilitator of community,
Facilitative
right?
community. Yeah.
How much did your connection with the community, your community, grow once you started comedy? Because I imagine that you're more recognizable, you're out there more people follow you on social media, people
Mm.
see you, out and about in the community. Like how much did that improve your relationship with the community? And then how much is there like a responsibility or a weight that you now feel because you are more recognizable and you have a louder voice within the community?
So one thing I realized in doing comedy is that comedy expanded my community. Right.
Mm,
Before I did comedy, I don't think I had any trans friends. I didn't have that many gay friends.
yeah.
I didn't have you named a group. I didn't have that many of those friends. That's usually how friendship groups work. It's a lot of
Okay.
people that look like you and sound
Sure.
like.
Yeah.
And now that has expanded. So talk about like not just responsibility to the community I came up with, but like now because I have friendships in certain groups, I have responsibility to them as just a friend that I
Sure.
didn't have before, right?
Yeah.
While maintaining responsibility to people who I came up with as just like being somebody that they're proud of,
Yeah.
but not like looking for their approval, but just somebody that can say he's not embarrassing us. Whether it's my family
Yeah.
or what I mean, or he's looking to create art and create content or whatever in ways that like doesn't take advantage of any community.
Yeah.
And so my relationship with community has I don't know if it's changed because I'm still not. I mean, I can like I said, I'm not that recognizable, which is good.
Yeah.
It
Not a
is. I
bad thing.
remember my
Yeah.
favorite quote is like I think it's George Wallace, the comedian George Wallace,
Yeah.
and he's talking about he's like I'm the perfect type of famous because like I can pee and nobody will bother me. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's what you want.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't have that like weird like people coming up to me that often. Like I've had a couple of times, but that is what it is. But yeah, just responsibility is like I don't I owe because I have connections with these people. I owe it to them to lift them up where I can, protect them where I can,
Right.
and never take advantage of them,
Yeah.
regardless of what they are. So I've expanded my community in that sense. And
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Was there another part to the question? I want to make sure I answered it.
No, I think you answered both parts. There was the responsibility and the connection. Like if the connection increased, but no, you answered both those questions or both those parts of the
Yeah,
question.
I think I do have responsibility though. Like
Yeah.
when you have a platform, you kind of have responsibility.
Yeah.
And like especially with the pandemic, I've realized that like that's kind of important.
Yeah.
Like if you have a platform, like it was literally like 2 days ago, I just got like accepted to do this like fellowship with like this
Oh,
art and social justice thing at this at Emory University here.
nice.
So
That's
it's like
awesome. Congrats.
I'll kind of be like a professor for like a
What?
semester. Yeah, like a
Okay.
co-professor with people. Yeah, yeah. So I'm very
That's
excited
awesome.
about that.
Congrats,
But
man.
they were thank you. Yeah, but they were asking me like why this, and I was like, oh, because I realized that there's a purpose in comedy outside of just getting laughs.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? And like I'm settling in on the idea of purpose now, and I think that really helps drive connection because when people know that you have a purpose and they can feel that purpose, they're gonna connect with you. And I know for me, my comedy has gotten better because I've like focused in on having a purpose. My friendships have gotten better. Like a lot of things gotten better because I've centered focus like purpose above. That's my weird saying now, but like purpose over profit or product. You know what I mean? Like purpose over product is like just goes a long way. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. I don't know. I was having this conversation with someone the other day. It's an interesting thing. I think it was Charles Barkley. back when he was playing, said something like I'm not
I'm not a
I'm not
role
a role
model.
model.
Yeah.
And at first you hear that, it's like, I don't know if I like that, but then it's like, at least he owns it, right? Like he admits it. And I think
Yeah.
the worst type of person is someone who wants to appear one way and appear like someone who is concerned about the community and concerned about the well-being of other people, when really all their actions don't support that.
Right.
Not that I agree with him in that sense, but like,
Yeah.
I
But you
think
don't
if
get
you,
to pick it.
well, that's part
You
of it
don't
too,
get.
right?
Yeah.
The platform just kind of comes with a lot of eyeballs that are looking towards you. You know
Yeah.
what I
You
mean?
can say you can say I don't choose to be a good role model. You can't say I'm not a role model
Yeah, that's a good way of
because
looking at it.
if I make you my role model, guess what? Just like you're my role model.
You have no choice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have no choice in the matter. And so like recognizing that and just being saying, like, I'm not saying there's some people who take that and they run with it and they're like, that's my whole personality is role model.
Sure.
And I'm
Right.
always weird of those people because I'm like, hey, I need you to be a whole person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that maybe
Yeah.
not be the healthiest thing.
It turns like a
But
cult
yeah,
leader
I
or
get what you're
something.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting perspective, but definitely appreciate that you're willing to take on that responsibility and that fellowship, man. That's gonna be awesome. So congrats on
Yeah,
that
thank
again.
you. Yeah, I'm excited.
Um, yeah. So before we get out of here, I would hate to get off this podcast without giving you a little time to talk about 4th and 10. Like I said,
Okay.
I mentioned at the beginning, it's a very funny podcast, especially if you are a sports fan and you love, like if you have Sports Center on all the time, if you have First Take, pick any of the shows, right? Like if you have that stuff on all the time, like you don't want to miss this podcast because it's three comedians talking about sports. Like it's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
So like tell us a little bit about that, how it started, and then kind of what you guys do.
Yeah, so 4th and 10, we call a sports-ish podcast.
Yeah.
If you're just a listener, because like
Yeah.
I think our first couple episodes we were like we're going to break down sports, and then I think we all realized like none of us played above high school. What do? We don't know X's and O's. We're
Yeah.
comedians. Like
Yeah.
let's be comedians who can talk about sports. So I always say it's like one of my favorite things is like a lot of our when we get like reviews, it's a lot of people's wives being like, my husband listens to this, and y'all aren't the worst thing that he listens to. Like we're wife approved, meaning like they'll listen to something like, oh, I like that, that's kind of funny. But
Yeah.
we still love like talking about sports, but like it'll deviate as if you've heard, it'll deviate
Yeah.
quickly, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
It's very
That's
fun.
fine. But yeah, it started, 4thdistrict.com. At first it was me and was it me and Dan Duncan, one of the founders? I feel like we had an idea.
Yeah.
He had an idea. He wanted to do a sports podcast. And I think I had just met Nathan Owens, who's another one of the hosts. I just met him at a show. I always tell him all the time. I was like, he smelled like a homeschool kid. Like I could just tell. I was like, you was a homeschool Christian school kid. And I was like, I
Yeah.
know our kind. I went to Christian school. Like I know what we are. Like I get it. So
Yeah.
and he just referenced, he was like, yeah, I think I want to do a podcast, like a sports podcast. And I was like, yo, I might know somebody that can help you with that. Just
Yeah.
trying to be helpful. So initially it was supposed to just be him and Dan.
Yeah.
Like I was just gonna be like, hey, here's somebody who wants to do this. But then I realized you can't just introduce somebody and not be there.
Right.
So I became
Right.
like a part of it. And then at the time, I think Damon who I referenced earlier, had just come back from China and had been living in Texas for a year. It was about to move back to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And me and him, like I said, that was my day one. And I knew he had like sports journalist background.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, he'd be perfect. Like I love producing stuff, right? I love like
it's
putting
fun.
pieces together.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I know his energy and Nate's energy is going to be very fun to watch.
It definitely is.
And so
Yeah.
I knew, having done like a little bit of radio, how to like there's roles to play. Like your
Sure.
podcast, like you know what I'm saying, like it's solo, so you're kind of like making it happen like here.
Oh, here's the
Like
funny thing. Sorry, not to cut you off. It's not a solo show. I do have a co-host.
I thought so. I thought I saw a
just
picture with
decides-
two people.
Yeah, I wish, this would be a great time to roast Deb because she just kind of picks and chooses when she shows up. So I'm going to tell her, I'm going to cut this part right here. And I'm going to say, David thought this was a solo show.
I did.
Because that's how you've treated this podcast. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
No, you're good. Cause I was like, when I said that, I was like, is it? Because I thought I saw a picture with like two people. So I was curious about that. But yeah, I just understand there's roles. Like if you, like you said, because it's not a solo podcast, you know that like at certain, it's almost like certain times you throw an alley oop and sometimes you try to score.
Right,
Some,
right,
you know
right.
what I mean? And so I knew
Sure.
with the personalities, like I could be someone who could like score when I needed to, but didn't have to do all the talking,
Right.
and kind of let other personalities kind of do the thing, and like quarterback things, and we all quarterback things in a way.
Yeah.
And I just liked all the people involved, and I was like, now we've been doing it. I don't know when we started, if I'm being perfectly honest, but I've loved
Yeah.
It's my favorite part of the week.
Yeah.
It's to like sit down and just chop it up with my friends about whatever silly stuff is happening in sports. So
Right.
yeah, it's
No,
a
and
sports
it's
podcast or somebody who doesn't like sports, but also if you like sports, you'll have a good time.
100%. I was gonna say that's a great way of describing it because, um, like you said, you guys will go off on tangents on different things that are just happening in the culture, and
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. And like you said, it is a perfect blending of personalities, and backgrounds and knowledge of sports, and I think that's what makes it fun too. Is I know that some of you guys have more knowledge of some sports, and some people are like, I couldn't care less about this sport. Like
yeah,
I'm gonna tap out here, and I
yeah.
think
Are
that's
you
the
talking
case.
about
And
Damon when we talk
yeah,
baseball?
I was gonna say, yeah, I
He
was gonna
gets
say,
quite like it's so funny being a rope. It's like it's like you just see like a rope like it turn off, like somebody turned the off switch.
yeah.
He's like like he powers down.
Right.
It's
And see,
hilarious.
I'm a huge baseball guy.
Me
So,
too.
but then I learned that pretty quickly listening to your guys' podcast. It's like, oh, we're going to hear nothing from Damon for a little while because
Yeah.
that baseball. So,
Other than like this sport is boring or something like that, like
yeah.
he'll pop up. Yeah, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
that's not the thing. Yeah,
Well, and let me ask. So I think, so the Savannah Bananas, are you familiar with them?
very
Uh,
familiar. Yeah,
That is, it's Savannah, Georgia, right?
Savannah, Georgia. Yep,
Have you been to
yep.
one of their games?
So the one time I was going to, I had a show in Savannah that night,
Yeah.
so I couldn't
Oh,
go. And the
okay.
whole city, I was trying. I remember trying to get people to come to my show, and they were
Yeah.
like, "We're going to Savannah Banana game," and I was like, "I want to go to the Savannah Banana game. Like, I don't want to do my show. I want to go see
Yeah.
them play." Yeah, I
Yeah.
that is a goal of mine to see them play, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that's
I've never
just,
been to Georgia, but like I want to go for that reason. I was telling my wife that I'm
oh
like,
man,
we need to go see these guys
yeah.
because it's
Savannah's a beautiful
amazing.
city.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
beautiful city, but that idea of just like we're playing baseball, but like children,
Right.
like it's like you know what I mean, like children
Yeah.
who know how to play baseball.
Right. I mean,
It's
they're really good.
they're really good, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of my goals is to go to the Savannah Banana. I think Nate was trying to throw out a first pitch with them.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
it happened. I
Makes
know he
sense.
threw out one the other day with Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA Braves AAA team.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that was his goal. I would love to do the same thing. I want to go throw out the first pitch.
That'd be awesome. And I mean, they're blowing up right now too.
They are. They're so good on Instagram.
Oh, they're incredible. I mean, yeah, it just caught my attention. I'm trying to think of the first time I saw them on Instagram. It popped up on the explore page.
Yeah,
I think a dude was doing the splits in the box. I'm like, what is
yeah.
this? And then you realize, they were breaking out and dancing before the pitch, and like it's just
Weird
wild stuff like that.
costume uniforms, like
Yeah, on stilts. Like, what is going on
yeah.
here? So
It's wow. So I think somebody came with the bat on fire.
yeah, right. They were smoking a cigar at one point and like
Yeah, it's
blew it in the
fun
catcher's
time.
face. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a cool concept, especially because I get it. Like, I love baseball. I've loved baseball my whole life, but
Me
I also
too.
understand that I understand why people can't stand baseball. Like, I'm cool with it.
Me
I don't care about that.
same.
It's not going to
I,
kill my enjoyment of it, but
yeah.
I feel like what they're doing, if you don't like baseball, but you can't appreciate that, then like, I don't know, there's
You
no
never
joy in your
wanted to
life.
like anything. You didn't
Yeah,
want to
there's
like it.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't love fun. I mean, there's nothing,
Yeah.
you can do about that. But
Right.
anyways, yeah, I wanted to ask you that because I know you're from that area. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
been cool.
about 4 hours outside of Atlanta.
Okay. A little
But
ways.
worth the drive. It's like I said, it's an old town,
Yeah.
a lot of fun, near the water. So yeah, and Savannah Bananas are definitely an attraction worth seeing.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen one day. Man, I'm hoping one day you come out towards my direction, California, Sacramento. I would love
Yeah, I'm trying to, man. I think I'm supposed to be in San Francisco in a month, maybe
really.
potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be out. I will see. Fingers crossed. But yeah, every time I'm in California, I have a good time. So I'm trying to, like I said, if I'm trying to get out there. So if you know people, let me know. I'd love to come out there.
All right. If I think of anybody, I'll let you know for sure, man.
Yeah.
Man, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Where can they follow you on social media, websites, YouTube? Where can they follow your guys'
Yeah.
podcast, all that stuff?
So Fourth and 10 podcast definitely follows that. FORTH and 10. And Instagram and Twitter is do or die. That's at DUEORDIE or DavidPerdueComedy.com. I would say my website's updated, but if you listen to podcasts, I do not do that. I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
I'm terrible. Yeah. But
All
yeah,
right.
that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, hey man, thank you again so much. Good luck with everything that's coming up, and you guys just gotta keep killing it. We appreciate it.
Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.